So this is a report on Java developer productivity by JRebel. So they have released a Java developer productivity report for 2022. And I want to, call out some key things here, some interesting stuff here. The 2022 Java Developer Productivity Report is an annual report that showcases the top tools, technologies, and development trends shaping the Java ecosystem. In addition, the report measures how advancement in these tools impacts Java development team productivity. One thing that I wanted to highlight is, in the foreword, they talk about how things have changed in the Java landscape, right? 10 years ago, we weren't talking about containers, Docker, Kubernetes, microservices, or even currently popular IDEs like IntelliJ and Visual Studio, right? IntelliJ wasn't as popular 10 years ago, and they have been doing this for 10 years, right? Since 2012. So 10 years ago, they were talking about what they might see in Spring 4, how long it might be until the Java 8 release. Nobody knew at the time that 10 years from now, we'll be looking at Java 18, right? 10 versions ahead, because Java was kind of slow cadence at the time. And then 10 years back, we were arguing about Java's position as the top programming language, although we are still doing that today. Are we still arguing about Java being the top programming language? Well, rest assured that we were doing that 10 years ago. In 2012, people were questioning, is it the end of Java? Is Java going away? We keep asking the same questions now. Isn't that interesting? All right. So we're going to go to they talk about the survey methodology and all that stuff, but basically they've asked around 300-ish people. Let's see. 48% of the survey people are developers, and 22% are Java architects, 15% team leads. Team leads is a little bit of a fuzzy concept. A developer in one company can consider themselves a team lead in another company. So I don't usually attribute a lot of weightage to team lead. However, developer versus architect is a little more definitive difference. Most people have a team size of 3 to 9, which makes sense. 10 to 20 is a little too much. You wouldn't want to have that especially if you have agile teams. You want to have a team size of 3 to 9. That sounds about right. Most of them are enterprise companies with above 1,000 people, which is where Java shines, right? Java is really popular, and you can have code which scales when you have such a big sized company. So that also makes sense. Not surprised with that. So among the overall trends, so this is the JDK programming language used as your main application. Okay, the main application, because most companies have the mix. Main application, 37% of developers use Java 8. 29% of developers use Java 11. And 12% use Java 12 or newer, right? This is still way, way off. A lot of people are stuck with Java 8. And my advice to those people would be, don't worry about Java 11. Like I mentioned earlier, you should go to the next LTS version, which is Java 17. Don't switch to Java 11 now. Go to Java 17. You're going to be doing a migration anyway. You're going to have to go through those pains anyway. Go through it once and get to the latest rather than make these incremental changes. The migration process itself might be incremental. You're probably going to go to make sure things work for Java 11 and then Java 17. However you do it implementation-wise, doesn't matter. When you're hitting production, hit with the latest version, latest LTS version, so that you don't have to go through these multiple upgrades again and again. So they kind of split this version based on companies with under 100 employees and companies with over 100 employees. So Java 8 is used 35% of the times with companies with under 100 employees and 39% of the times with companies with over 100 employees. Either way, Java 8 is not a good place to be in, right? You're missing on a lot of good stuff with Java. It's like, I understand some initial hesitancy with moving to Java 9 because, okay, modularity, it's a big problem and all that stuff. But now we are way past it. So you should get going. So if you're an architect in one of these companies, please consider switching. If you're a developer and you don't have the power to get this effort going, please talk to your architect and get it going. It's going to get worse and worse over time. You don't want to be stuck in Java 8. You have to do it at some point, right? What's also interesting here is the other programming languages. Kotlin is used by 8% of the folks, which is very less, I'll admit. I thought it would be a little more. Groovy is used 6%, which is higher than I had thought. Okay, I thought Kotlin would be way higher than this. Java 7 or older, 5%. And Scala is used 3%, which is also a little less than what I had hoped for, right? Kotlin and Scala, I kind of presumed it would be a lot more. Upgrade influences. What factors influence your decision to upgrade JDK versions? The biggest factor is LTS, and it should be. I've been talking about LTS all the time. You want to have longer term support because you wouldn't want to keep switching every year or every 6 months, right? You want to be switched to a version, especially if you have a large code base, switch to a version and stay there for 3 years. LTS allows you to do that. So that's the highest kind of factor in companies deciding where they want to switch to. Here is another aspect, which is security, but I think security kind of comes with LTS. Because if you go to the latest version, in order to have security, you have to be in this constant churn of keeping upgrades going on, right? In order to get security updates, you go to LTS. One of the reasons why people go to LTS is so that they get these security updates and patches on a regular basis, and they're not stuck with an older version of Java. So security and LTS, I think, are kind of related. So they kind of get the maximum weightage in terms of factors that influence people's decisions to upgrade JDK versions. Not a surprise here. JDK 17 upgrade plans, right? 2021 marked the release of the latest LTS Java with JDK 17. While not as impactful to the overall market as Java 8, it does seem to have some momentum behind it that outpaces other post-Java 8 LTS releases, right? So here is the momentum. The momentum is people have been watchful. People have been like, yeah, I don't want to do Java 11. Should I do that? Well, now Java 17 is like, you're already 2 versions behind in LTS. It's time you catch up. So people who have been holding off on the Java 11 LTS version are going to be like, oh man, it's about time. We should do the update. It's kind of like a wake-up call, having another LTS version. And this is probably what's going to get those, last bunch of folks in Java 8 to switch to Java 17. So most people say they will switch within the next 6 months. 37% of them say that. 30% of them say sometime after the next 12 months. The problem with waiting for 12 months is your LTS version is going to be a year old, right? And you are going to get support for 3 years. So you're just going to wait for you're just going to get the benefit of LTS for 2 years. So I think people who are saying, yeah, I need a year to do a Java upgrade will have to rethink how they do these upgrades, because it's not usually feasible to take a year to do a Java upgrade. You should have good processes so that you kind of get there faster. 8% say never. Interesting. I would love to talk to somebody who has said that. But moving on, I'm going to quickly blaze through these things. The most popular JRE and JDK distribution used is Oracle Java at 36%. OpenJDK is 27%. Adopt OpenJDK Adoptium is 16%. Amazon Corretto is 7%. I think most of these people are basically just on AWS and they're just using Amazon Corretto. Zulu is 6%. GraalVM is 3%. Other is 3%. OpenLogic JDK is 2.3%. No surprises here that Oracle JDK is leading. I think they've kind of put the all licensing issues and all that fuss to rest. People are a little more open using Oracle JDK. What's the architecture of the main application that you develop? 32% of the people say they use microservices. 22% of the people say they use monolith. It is more towards microservices, which I hope is being evaluated and seriously considered. Here's what worries me. Companies under 100 employees, right? 28% of them are using microservices. My question is, do all of these 28% of people really need microservices when you have a company size that's under 100? Microservices are necessary for larger companies, okay? Larger companies need microservices because you want to be able to separate deployments. Smaller companies under 100 Do you really need microservices? I don't know. 28% of them are using microservices. Thankfully, companies over 100 employees, the percentage of microservice usage is increased. It's around 36%. So that's good to know. But something to keep in mind is microservices is not always the answer. Make sure you really need it because you're going to be paying a cost to adopting and using microservices. You want to make sure you really need the benefits of microservices so that it's okay for you to pay the cost. Don't pay something that you're not going to get a value out of, right? So microservice adoption, 44% are fully microservice based overall. 44% are currently transitioning to microservices. 10% are talking about it. 2% tried, but it didn't work out. Okay. What I'm curious is how much of this 44% who are currently transitioning are going to go to this tried but didn't work out category. It'll be interesting. It's a journey after all. I'm going to skip some of these stuff. This is an interesting part. What microservice application framework are you using on your main project? 74%. Overwhelmingly, people are using Spring Boot. Spring Boot is the choice for microservices in most of the situations I've seen. This is not a surprise. I wouldn't be surprised if this said something crazy like 85% or even 90% because it's an overwhelming choice at this point. So you cannot go wrong with Spring Boot. Other is 18%. I think the note here says it's Java EE or Jakarta EE as well as Vanilla Spring framework. Interesting that people are choosing Vanilla Spring for microservices, which is also Spring, and in a way goes to the Spring Boot category, kind of makes it easier for them to switch to Spring Boot later if they want to. The most common other response was that they weren't using a microservice framework at all, which makes sense. The other interesting part here is Quarkus is at 5%. Quarkus is another up and coming framework, which is super useful. I haven't personally used it a lot, but I do plan to try it out. But yeah, that's those are the top microservice framework usage. Lesson here: be good in Spring Boot. Everybody's using it. Okay, at least 74%. All right. Microservice application startup times. Have you experienced an increase in the time it takes to start up the services in your microservice application since the original transition creation of microservice? Has there been a change in the startup time for your microservice? So 35% of the people say no increase in startup times. It works just the same way. 13% say they got over 50% increase. That means you're probably doing something wrong. You shouldn't get this much of an increase with microservice startup compared to when you started it, right? You're probably overloading your microservice or something is wrong here. 10 to 50% increase is affecting 30% of people. But yeah, the majority is no increase, which is a good sign. Why the increase? The truth is there's a large variety of different reasons why companies are seeing this increase in startup times as microservice applications gradually gain modules and as development teams build their application beyond the initial creation of the app, companies are running into increased startup times much more similar to that shown in the monolithic applications, right? If you break something down into microservices, then you add a lot of stuff to it and the service kind of loses the micro in microservice. It's not a microservice anymore. It becomes a macro service. You're going to have these problems. You're going to end up with the same startup time problems that a monolith would have. So that's something to be careful about. And it's kind of like you have a drawback in either way, I should say. Like if you kind of break it down into multiple microservices, you have a cost there as well, right? There's a management cost involved. Each microservice is going to start faster, but if you have more, there's more cost involved in managing those. Or you can say, I'm not going to break it down further, put each microservice to be a little bit bigger. And now you kind of cut down on the management cost, but now the startup time for this microservice is a little bit more. So it's all about trade-offs. All right. What virtual machine platform do you use? Where are the Java applications run on? The most popular choice, close to half, is Docker. 41% of people are using Docker to run their Java applications. Okay, most popular selection. Kubernetes was second with 26%. would be interested to see what the containerized solution is. Usually Docker and Kubernetes. So I'm guessing some of those Kubernetes words actually go to Docker as well. VMware is 16%. Hardly anybody is using Vagrant. NA is 10%, which means they're running on possibly bare metal or possibly some kind of a PaaS offering. I don't know what NA is. But yeah, so these are the most popular virtual machine platforms, containerized platforms. Again, Docker is leading the pack. All right, PaaS provider, AWS is leading with 31%. Application servers, Tomcat is leading with 48%. Tomcat is still ruling in the list of application servers. All right. And then build tools, Maven is leading with 68%. Gradle didn't quite become as popular as people hoped it would be, right? People still prefer Maven for whatever reason. I kind of prefer Maven too because I've never found the need to switch to Gradle. Maven is like, they say, yeah, it's verbose and it has a lot of stuff. I have no problem with verbose because I don't usually use, pom.xml. I just write it and then it's done. I don't mess with it a lot. So it works. I haven't found the need for Gradle, but some people swear by it. Not many, apparently. Maven's still leading with 68%. Ant is still holding on with 6%. I remember working with Ant back in 2006 was when I first learned about Ant. I'm kind of glad to hear that people are still using Ant. 6% of people are still using Ant, which is kind of nice. Popular IDE, IntelliJ is the most popular with 48% usage. Eclipse is next with 24%. VS Code is third with 18%. I think VS Code is growing in usage. Eclipse is reducing in usage. CI/CD trends, Jenkins is being used 46% of the time. No surprises there. And commit frequency. How many times do you commit code in your CI/CD build per day? 35% of people say 5+ times. This is a good thing to have. You have continuous integration and continuous delivery. It's a good sign that your people are committing more often. That means that there is a good suite of tests, automated tests that run whenever you commit. That kind of allows people to commit on a regular basis. All right. I'm going to skip the rest of this report. Hopefully this was helpful. This is the Developer Productivity Report by Jay Rebel. You can do a Google search and find this report. I'm also going to try and post a link to this report in the description so they can check it out.